silly introductions. I'm April.
Hi, April.
I'm April. Welcome to.
We're going to need some light so we can see their faces.
It's great.
Will we?
It's
All the way
good
from
to be
Can you turn just that one on? Yeah,
driving.
that's right. That's okay. I can see them on the video.
So the unofficial retitling of this is what have April and Melody been up to?
Yeah, what have you been doing?
I think it's well titled.
So we're going to, just because of the convenience of switching computers, we're going to talk about Dskalyzer first, which is the most recent product we've come out with. Now, it came out of discussions with Jason Scott about a number of things he was having to do manually. So, in terms of being able to search large disk archives for to be able to weed out what duplicates, like which disks are duplicates or which disks had trivial differences in content.
Yeah, so it's as someone mentioned earlier, hashing disks, and that's good, except certain copy programs. If your friend had a disk that had some old stuff they weren't interested in anymore, and they said, "Oh, give me a copy of that game you've got," it would copy it over the top, but it would only copy the active sectors.
Yeah.
So what you'd end up with is two disks that, if you looked at the catalog were identical, but if you looked at the disk as a whole in terms of data, including the inactive sectors, they aren't the same. When those become a DSK, they're different if you check some of them.
Yeah.
So Jason Scott was saying, you know, I've got these disks, they're showing up as different, but when I go into hex editor, I can see that there's blobs of data that are different between the two disks, but otherwise they appear to be the same disk. So that's kind of what started the idea of Dskalyzer.
And because we had a certain amount of functionality already because of Octalyzer, which we'll get to after this, it was easier. We weren't writing, like, it didn't need to be written from scratch. It just needed to be, adapted.
Yeah, so as part of Octalyzer, and because Octalyzer originally started as an interpretive environment, we wanted a way to load programs off existing disk images. So we created handlers, to be able to read and access DSK files, ProDOS files, ProDOS, AppleDOS, you name it. So at some point we said, when this conversation happened, we said, why don't we just kind of split this code out and make a tool? So that's what we did. So it's actually open source. It's up on GitHub. It's written in Golang, which is the language that we wrote Octalyzer in. I'll basically give you a run through of how it works. So in the grand scheme of demos, I'll say, here's something I made earlier. So we've got a big archive of disks. There's about this is part of the collection that we kind of curated for Octalyzer, and there's about 12,000 disk images in there. They're actually available through Octalyzer online, but we'll talk about that later. But again, even in curating those disks, you're going to end up with duplicates. So it makes a good use case for kind of testing out the tool. So I'll point out it is available on Windows, Linux, and Mac, and Raspberry Pi, and FreeBSD.
Go has a lot of targets.
That was one of the advantages of Go, is you can easily target a lot of different platforms. So
now how Dskalyzer works is it analyzes. There's a two-stage process. So first, for the sake of convenience, because, well, nobody wants to search through 12,000 disk images to find out they searched for the wrong thing, right? That's slow and tedious and boring. So the first thing the first thing that's done is we have basically an analysis process that goes through each disk and then basically rips out and caches the relevant information so that when you go and do searches later, you don't have to, it's not having to, go through and decode each DSK file, every time it does it, because it can just look at the extracted data. Now, when you're talking 140K disk images, if the cache data is, the same size as the actual disk art, it's not that big a deal, because even 12,000 disk images is, only like a gigabyte,
So, in order to not have people staring at not much happening for a while, I'm not going to ingest the entire 12,000 disks, because that would take over 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Oh my God.
However, actually, it's quicker on Mac. I have to say, it's quicker on Mac. Hers could do it in about 8. Same machine, just running Windows. I blame NTFS. So we've got this collection, and we've got, for example, games. I'm just going to pick a letter. It's sorted into folders by letter, for example, but you just give the ingest command, and you can see it there. It's thinking about it. I was tempted to put up like a Cookie Monster thing here going on. There you go, it's ingested the A section, so you get some stats about how long it's taken total. Some disks are unrecognised, it couldn't identify the format.
Yeah, these are ones with custom RWTS, generally. So we've got a bunch of Apple-DOS 16 sector disks, we've got some SSI RDOS 3 disks, and we've got a few ProDOS disks there. So it'll give you the stats on that. It'll also tell you that it took 67 milliseconds per disk. Okay, so we've done that in real life. I've already ingested the whole collection. So what can we do with this? I guess is the next question. So it is like its own shell, so we've created it that way, and you can work with history and things like that, all the stuff you'd expect from, standard command line stuff. Firstly, it does most of the normal disk stuff. So you can extract files from a disk, you can, copy files onto a disk, you can copy files from a disk image to another disk image. Basically everything CyderPress does to a point, except you can do it from the command line, so you can script it and use it for shell stuff and that sort of thing. But
and you can mount 8 disks at once, and you can switch between them and copy between them, so you can kind of set up a working set and go, okay, I want to put those files over there and that kind of stuff. But it's pretty run-of-the-mill stuff. It's, you can make directories, you can move files, you can copy files. The write stuff works currently with ProDOS and Apple DOS volumes. So not currently with things like RDOS and things like that. So
the extract stuff works with RDOS and Pascal, and it currently converts binary images, like it converts binary files into the CyderPress file format with the
file name with the addressing information, that kind of thing there. So
yeah, and it converts text files, and it detokenizes AppleSoft and Integer Basic.
ASCII Merlin source code.
Good question. I'd have to test that.
I need something that does that.
So it's not finished yet, but one of the things that's kind of half finished is actually being able to compile Merlin source code onto a DSK. It's about half done? Maybe?
About half done.
Yeah.
It's on my list.
Oh, I just want to be able to chunk it back in the text and put them on Git. I can put the stuff on a repository.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as a simple demo, I just mounted, while we were talking, I just mounted ProDOS basic DSK, probably a disk that everybody's seen 1,000 times. So you can see there, you can type cat, and it'll give you a listing, which is unfortunately scroll off the screen. But it's the file contents and information about the files, how much they are in blocks, and information about free and used blocks on the disk. So if I were to let's just do that because it's easy. So we do have this extract command. So there's an Applesoft file called startup here. So if I type extract startup. Oh, and something I should point out, when you're doing these commands, there's tab completion, so you can complete the command, and then if I were to just put star tab, it's contextually looking inside the disk that's mounted at the moment, so you don't have to keep typing.
It's doing all the cool shell stuff.
Yep. Cool. So that's actually extracted the file. It's extracted 2 files in the case of basic listings. One is the original raw binary version of the Applesoft basic file, so that's the tokenized form. The second is actually an ASCII version that's been detokenized. So some people may find that useful. That stuff can also be loaded directly into Octalyzer because it can load from text files as well.
Some people can find that useful. I want it.
Okay.
So the more exciting stuff though is being able to search an entire disk archive. So if we wanted to for example, find all the disks that had Frogger on it.
Okay. There's a couple of approaches to this. Search has a couple of modes. I'll point out too, there's a help command, so if you do help and then one of the other commands, it'll give you explanation of how to use it. So we can search by file name, for example, and that's case insensitive. Now, if I do it just like this, it's going to search the entire collection, so it has to pass a fair bit of metadata, so it might take a minute to do. I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to cheat a little bit and give it a helping hand, because all of the search commands also take a path that you can narrow down within the collection. So you can say, oh, I know it's within this folder.
This is like,
Yeah.
this sounds like EXIF tool for disk images.
So, yeah, so search for disk images,
Exactly what I was thinking about
games.
a couple weeks ago.
Researching compilation.
Ah, yeah, that's a good idea.
So it is compilations is in games.
Is it?
Yeah.
I never thought we'd have so much development
Yeah.
happen.
Autocomplete, I'll point out there is local system file name autocomplete, but because Windows sucks, it's not 100%, so that's why I typed that out. It's on my to-do list to fix.
It works on a Mac?
Works beautifully. Yes, you can just like / blah, and just keep hitting tab.
I was slightly delayed.
Daniel didn't know where that was. It was not stereo.
I had my own question. Does it work with online remote archives, or is it just on disk stuff local?
At the moment, you need to ingest them locally, but then again, I mean, even on Windows or Mac, that could be a network share, right? That could be a network mount point, in which case you could still do that.
Cool.
That's so cool. You can see this ones that are the same size.
Yep, you can. Now, what's interesting though is each of these also has, it tells you the SHA checksum for the file, which is something that we gather while we're kind of
That.
ingesting. And I hope I copied that whole thing. We could also do search.
Like you just
sorry.
more information. Like
Yeah.
point out these are 2 different versions of Frogger.
Yeah, they are 2 different versions of Frogger.
Of the same one.
So they're different size, but they're also a different checksum.
Yeah.
The one above it's the same then.
Yeah.
One,
So 2 up
two
is
down.
the same. But,
So can this,
But these are both the same Frogger game per
Yeah.
se. They're 2 variants. So we were able to basically discover that there are 2 different variants on the 2 different disks, and that there are other disks that contain the variants.
Yeah, but the other situation you might have is that these are identical ones that are called Frogger in the case of these particular two files. What if someone renamed it to something else?
Frog splat.
Yeah, or something without even.
Yeah.
Senseless violence.
So in that case,
I didn't know about that.
I love it.
so in that case, we'll have a look for the hash. I'm gonna limit the search, but not by much. Bear with me here.
Is this pipe, the result, the output pipeable to something else so that you can have it act on?
You can. All of these functions are also, you can include them in like shell scripts and stuff
Yeah,
like that
okay.
because they're available as command line flags.
Okay.
There's also a mode where you can just feed the shell command, you can do a one shot, and you can also run scripts. So you can say, oh, I did too.
Did you do up, arrow?
Oh, I did up arrow that. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, you're
So we've given it a bit more to think about there.
So it has to cache the files every time you do the command?
It's basically loading just the subset of the metadata file into memory that's relevant to the particular task.
Right.
So, yeah.
So now, interestingly, we've discovered that Night Stalker disk, or the disk, the Night Stalker DSK file, has a copy of Frogger on it.
That particular frog.
Incidentally, it does have the same name
Yes.
in this case, but we would have found it anyway if it had been called anything
outside your
else.
prior
Yep.
So, once again for Slug Group, how did you find out it was the same copy of Frogger that we were previously looking at?
Okay, so when we ingest a disk into the database, we actually go through the catalogue, we read and consume each file that's on the disk. From that, we generate a checksum, which we store back in the metadata file.
Right, yep.
So now I've ingested 12,000 disks.
Yeah.
And I've got a bunch, and I can say, oh, give me all the ones with that hash code, which is you know, a unique fingerprint. And then that way you can find the dupes.
Wow, cool.
So is the hash code on file as well as on the disk? Do you have a
So
disk hash file?
okay, so there's basically three levels of hash codes. There's a global one, which is as if I just ran the hash tool at the command line and generated on the file. Then there's active sectors, which I'll show you next, which is only looking at the bits of the disk that the catalogue says we should care about.
This is great.
And then there's the file level one as well.
Excellent. Because the file could be renamed. As you said, you could have the same disk contents, but the
Exactly, it could be that
composition is
copy
different,
scenario where there was
and
already
then
pre-existing
files
data on the
could be
disk.
the same,
Yeah.
which is what you've just done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool.
Can you do a text search?
Oh yeah, there is one more search. So we can search on text in any of the files on the disk. Oregon. Okay, and we'll search under. Oh, I lost my place. The only shame about running it on Windows is you have to use the Windows command prompt. So. Okay. Now this is given us every file that contains the word Oregon. In any case, it's listed out the same way. It's listed out with the type file type. You see there Oregon Trail Disk 1, and you can see management, which has obviously got the word Oregon in it.
I so want this right now.
It's pretty cool. It is very cool. But because it's listing the hashes, you can then say...
But then you can narrow it down. Then you can grab the hash and you can say, okay, give me the
grab it
matches for
through
that.
this.
Yeah.
Exactly what
Two.
I think
Next to best friend.
Two.
Okay.
I'm making auto loader with this image disks. Snaps a picture of it. You got this thing?
Well, one of the things we were actually considering was basically cataloguing anything that looked like an image. are on the disk as well, like image contents as well for cataloguing and archival purposes as well. But that's, again, that's all the to-do list. All right, so they're the kind of the key search functions. The other major thing probably is reports. So reports are similar to searches, and we've got a command called help report. Well, it's called report. I'm just typing help report to get it. So there's three modes there. Whole dupes. I'll talk about the two main ones, which is whole dupes and active sector dupes. Whole dupes is what we were talking about before. The whole file has a particular checksum. We find the duplicates. The one that sparked the discussion with Jason Scott is basically this active sector dupes. And similar to the other commands, okay, I go with B because I know the results of this one, so there's less, so it won't flood the screen. So we're running it. We're looking for disks that have the same active sector fingerprint, and that runs pretty quickly. So you see here it said we've got this BattleTech disk 2 of 2, blah 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 blah, and global hash. In these two cases, you'll see that the global hash is the same. So these are 1-for-1 duplicates. Now,
the last one, if you did just a disk, like a whole disk comparison, it would think that the last disk was unique. But since we've hashed only the active sectors, we know it's not unique, and we can throw it away.
Yes.
yeah.
Or at least peek on the inactive
What's in
sectors
it?
and see if there's
Maybe
something
there's
cool there.
interesting stuff in there.
Yeah,
But it gives you a digital
lost copy of
archaeology.
something.
It gives you digital archaeology pointers.
It
Yeah.
does, doesn't it?
It does.
It's awesome.
Yep. I was just thinking.
The variable, like the variable matching.
Oh, the fuzzy match.
Yeah, for the
Yeah. Actually, I'll have to check the command prompt because I just realised that one is not.
So there's one more use case to look at, and that is, say I have a game with a high score file, right? I mean, if I have, if 10 different people had copies of this game, and they all have the same, they're all going to have different high score files, right? So how do I automate weeding out and finding these disks that just have that subtle discrepancy? So what we did was we just created a function that'll go, okay, do 90% of the contents between these disks match, or do 95% of the contents between these disks match?
Yeah, but man, how do you choose whose high scores files you keep?
That's just the important question.
Daniel from Brisbane might have the
If you-
higher score than
If
Sean
you see
from
the initials
Sydney.
are just AAA, that's another anonymous asshole. Leave him alone.
That's not really for us to decide, though. I mean, that's for like Jason Scott.
Oh yeah, that's that whole, guns don't kill people. Okay, sorry.
I mean, the problem.
No,
The problem is that archive.org in particular wants their disk archive to be, more useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the problem is that Jason Scott's been getting all of these disks and imaging them, and that's great and everything. But if you throw them up and then you present people with 99 copies of
People start complaining.
Miss Pac-Man, well,
Yeah,
they,
it's all
Confused and walk away.
they haven't got a clue, and so then they abandon the session, which is not what we want.
No.
We want people to.
But if it allows curation of a collection where the whole collection wants to be available, but you also say, here's like the
Yeah, exactly.
new collections on the
Exactly.
archive.
So you
So
can.
here's the collection.
It helps with investigation. It helps with
Yeah.
curation.
No, it's fantastic.
But the fact that you can do, an entire collection of discs, scan an entire collection of discs,
Yeah.
and work with the entire collection. It just wasn't really something that an application had existed to
Well,
do.
the first thing I want to
previously.
do is just go to my copy of Asimov from about 3 years ago. Just start exploring. It's great.
Copy of those, isn't it?
And compare it to the discs I have, which have file-based cracks of games, and see do they already exist? Is it worth keeping those discs? I put in those disc images anyway, because my choplifter and everything may be different, may be the same.
May have high school. Sure.
Yeah, well, almost certainly.
Almost.
Well, there's a limited choplifter, isn't there? You can only get a certain number. 64 of them.
I remember doing snake bite twice, 2.5 times over.
That's it. I was missing a flag, I think. So you can use it from the command line. You can basically set a similarity value. Yeah, yeah. So that's a number between 0 and 1. So 1 is 100% matched.
Wow, okay. So 12,000 discs, that's all of archive.org's collection.
So you can see here.
No, it's all of what we have. I think archive.org's probably got 30,000 or something.
75 to 76 match, and here are the things that match.
Here the thing that, so
And what one's
equals
done.
means it's a 1-to-1 match, and
Yeah.
it does that matching by the hash, so it may be different file names. Then you'll see minus, so it's saying this particular disk is missing this particular file.
Yeah.
And you can see that these files down here, these plus ones, these have been added.
Okay. What if there's the same file name but the hash?
Amazing.
Well, then it doesn't count. Yeah.
They'll be
they-
treated as different files, so, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Yeah, because it's the content of the file that's more important than the name.
And this also sort of allows you to establish the progeny of particular disk images. So you can find out, okay, or you can take, a particular DOS disk and then find out how many disks, worked with that, like used that as the
Well, you could
original
almost
copy.
see, it's almost like the bug in Apple Mail.
Well, I
Where it stores
won't,
drafts and they just slowly build up the drafts on the server.
I won't
You see
run
the
it.
message building, and you can see contents building perhaps on different copies of the same disk.
Yeah.
I'm not going to run it because it's very similar, but we also have basically, there's a version of these reports which is subsets, and that is we're looking for a disk, or we're comparing disks in the context of one just being this other disk plus maybe a few added files.
Yeah, so in,
So it can identify
so in that
those.
case, you could specify the DOS 3.3 master disk and then search against the rest of your disk archive to find out, which disks, have that as their root. Or,
Yeah. You can almost build like a family
build a
of
tree.
disks
Yeah,
with
yeah,
differences.
yeah. Which, so in terms of,
Well, I'm thinking like the typical scenario when we were all young and at school and handing over copies of disks.
yeah.
This would go from little mini communities to communities through BBSs and stuff.
Which is why, and it makes me a little kind of like, which is why Jason Scott has been archiving student disks, which makes me a little nervous. But there's going to be there's forensic value there, to trace in the future.
But it's also going to have embarrassing content. I mean, just thinking about as a consultant, and some of the files I see on computers and bookmarks and stuff, it's potentially embarrassing content, and it can be identifiable if it's like, Sean McNamara's homework disc, but I have things that aren't related to homework on there.
Chances are it won't be interesting for at least another couple hundred years anyway. It's like looking back.
Not
into
once
old-
it's searchable. We can look at Donald Trump's homework discs and see what interesting things he said 40 years ago.
Virus.
Yeah.
You can follow viruses like this.
Yeah.
And exactly. I mean, and yeah, okay, good thing, bad thing, double-edged sword or not. I mean, yes. I mean, the point is to be able to search disk archives for, for text or content or what have you. I mean, there's, I guess, But from a curation standpoint, forensic analysis standpoint, I mean, the tool is needed. You know, the only thing that's missing that's kind of big on the list is we don't support the resource fork thing.
For GS. Yeah.
Yet.
There's actually an open issue on GitHub for doing that. So.
But that'll be in the next sprint.
Nobody cares about the GS, so just.
I wouldn't think that by the number of GSs I spot in the room.
Well, if I brought my Apple Europlus collection, there'd be more here than the two GSs.
We take more gentle.
You want to battle?
No.
Alright, so anybody have any questions about Dskalyzer?
Yeah, I just want to know, I just want to know where and how you implemented this to affect, obviously your demos have given us run silky smooth, and how can you apply that? Is the archive org using it in some ways? It just seems like you've done a huge amount of work, but I want to know, is someone using it?
Yeah, Jason Scott is as far as I know using it.
Already?
Well, he's trying to sort through the big collection of discs that he's gotten over the last couple of months. So yeah, but otherwise, there are some people I know of who are using it on the Raspberry Pi because people they're using their Apple Pi thing, and there's no real way to automate working with DSK files on that platform. But because there's no ARM tool, but now there is. So
I just wonder whether, like Jason Scott in the last week or two has posted on Twitter a couple of screenshots of really basic Applesoft basic apps that say 10 print J disk 20. And so he just put them up as interesting things that he's found on student discs that he's got in his collection. I just wonder whether he's grabbed that.
I don't know for sure, but I do know that he's aware of it. And I
should look at the file name.
Yeah.
It says .asc at the end.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I do know that he's aware of the existence of the tool. So
That's great.
I wonder if anyone from any other platforms have gone, hey. Because I know there's one other platforms that have got way more disk images than ours, and
just ignore them if they ask for any.
Those Commodore people never gave us any help anyway, screw them.
Give this demo tomorrow night.
Yes!
Commodore 64.
They're ours.
It's only available for Apple II.
Now, to be honest, Octalyzer is itself meant to be a multi-platform emulator, and Dskalyzer uses the same, they're using the same libraries. So as we add disk support for other platforms, then that'll flow through into Dskalyzer.
It's naturally going to make sense that it'll extend the support to that.
Just say it's available for Commodore right now, and then put the URL up. Commodore sucks, Apple II.
No, 10.
Download for free.
Go to 10.
Load asterisk, comma 8, comma 1. Go get screwed.
Right, so we're going to switch gears now and switch adapters.
It's kind of a really good editing job to do. Sorry, Steve.
Okay, there's not, because it's some sort of GUI that talks about data fields and research.
What's that, mate?
The little basic
programs that
Jason's got tweeted. It's not from you.
According to the article,
Wow.
screwed before I left Sydney.
I did want to mention Dennis Maloney's got Disk Browser, which is JavaScript, but it has on-the-fly image extraction and supports different color palettes as well. So you can click on an image and then just go color palette, NTSC, all the different ones get different colors, and it's instant. So I'm not sure if there's something you could look at on his Java app to see how he's implemented opening images up.
Possibly. It's really, most of the code's actually in Octalyzer actually. It's just a matter of me pulling it out. Because at the moment, at the moment, Octalyzer's not open source, but we're kind of open sourcing
It's a unique
components
point
of it as we
in-
go.
Everything in history is a unique
Yeah,
point.
we've got image
You're
handling
probably
and
not gonna
stuff in there,
have a platform.
and that is
4
certainly going
years
to
from
make
now,
its way
people are
into
gonna
there.
use.
But yeah, interesting times.
Like,
What do
we
you mean?
used this
And
4
lots of
years ago,
coffee.
and we're still discovering it, because
Yes,
the
I've
platform
noticed.
now is the OS, and the OS just keeps going. So Linux and whatever
What's
is
the
always
user
available.
keyword their product? Is this a purchasable?
What's
It's the case
for,
now, it's basically x86, there is
Dskalyzer?
no platform.
No.
It's just
Yeah,
one.
it's the OS.
Same with Octalyzer.
Yeah.
It's free. It's just that.
Is that what you're talking about with
Not
Octalyzer?
open source at the moment.
We're talking about the fact that just
That-
at this point in history, that we're able to analyze
It's a-
all these Apple II images and whatnot, and go and find all this stuff. And that we're celebrating 40 years of Apple II, blah, blah, blah. Whereas there is no more platform to celebrate 40 years
Oh, I
of,
thought this
40
was
years from
Apple
now,
II
because
that we saw
it's-
at KFest. This is different again.
but not
There's
the
He
ARM
had
and
3D
x86.
mode, don't he?
same. Yeah,
Or am
but
I
again,
just
go back
lying,
to
Probably not, John.
Too many
the
people
IDE,
don't know it.
IDE environment. You just
I thought
Yeah.
file it,
Apple
let it
II
run for
was
that one.
3D mode.
Yeah.
No, Apple IIe has, or their,
gonna be
his
interesting
thing,
to see what
his
it looks
thing
like in
was
40
the
years.
rewind
Yeah.
and the memory map
I mean,
stuff.
this stuff was bitching back then. People
Okay,
go, you
that's cool.
played this?
I'm just gonna play this video through.
For
and
me,
then
this stuff was
we'll
like,
go through.
it's 8-bit. Give me some 16-bit goodness.
Like, look at that.
But it was free, you could get it anyway.
Earhart.
I haven't seen that one before.
Now that I know there's more than one.
Earhart was great because it looked really, really good on a composite monitor and crappy on RGB. Double high res was an amazing hack.
Oh, no, I haven't done that.
Oh yes, it is.
It's like,
Moonlander.
it's like Moon Patrol.
Moon Patrol, thank you.
It's like the time you want to, the time that you want to have. Oh, my God, what did I lose now?
That's how I have that.
Yeah. How do you have the images?
Guilty, we'll talk about
Very
that.
nice.
Is this a video you've compiled, or are you?
This is a video Melody's put together.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
No, we're not quite at like playing like 10 seconds like
Like game surfing.
Yeah.
Nah, sucks. Nah, sucks.
There you go. There's your. Woo! Didn't know there was an Apple II version.
That was the first one that came out.
Ghostbusters, neither did I. It's actually got the digital speech too at the start.
Mockingbird Club stuff, or?
No, just out the speaker.
It's digitized.
Okay. Far out.
It boots up. Ghostbusters! And then starts loading.
Oh, I've got to play that sometime.
It's like the Haley Project has another one that's got a big old introduction with a digitized logo on it before it starts loading games.
There's Tetris for an 8-bit?
Yep. The Ghostbusters was the first one. The Ghostbusters on the Apple IIe was the first one that came out back then. Then Commodore. They had the bouncing ball and the cool music, but ours played better.
It's actually
Yes, Sabotage, man, I played that a lot. Yes, I have seen it. Yes, played that. What's that called?
Oh, waving over.
No, I never played that one. Flappy, but I haven't played that yet either.
Another product. Asteroid.
Yeah.
Sorry, Asteroid 2.
That was in the era when clones were blatant.
Oh, I've got that for Atari ST.
Yeah, it might have been called Barbarian.
Yeah.
Yes!
That's like creating
Yeah,
Space
it was
Intruder.
then
I
sold
mean, who
on
do
the
that?
Apple II.
Okay.
I'm not sure the reason for the name
Graphics are
change.
good.
Yeah, it was DHDR.
There's probably only, how many games are double high rated?
There's a few. Rampage,
Looked awesome. Looked awesome.
There's a Pelican software one.
Another bit.
So this is the application. So it works with OS 10, Windows, and Linux. But it's not currently packaged, so you're basically downloading just a binary and running it. I'm hoping that it's going to open at the release resolution. I didn't really think about that.
They have you full screen and it should.
You make a PowerPC version?
It's not.
Depends on the CPU. You can target Power 8, but not below. Sorry.
I'm very concerned about the fact it's not opening.
What about AMCC stuff?
You can run the projector much higher. I mean, it took 1920 by 1080.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
it's
trying to
stuff.
increase the resolution.
You just have to optimize not for the projector and optimize for the
Depends on your dongle, it seems. I've noticed.
So it's a scale rather than best for display.
Try to
There's
obey.
so many different options.
Yeah, it'll just look pretty.
That's better. You've got more real estate there. Or it seems like it anyway. I can't read the text.
That's alright, because you're going to be running it.
Okay, cool.
You make me check the server now.
Yeah.
Does do an update check when it starts up, so I'm just going to make sure that.
You don't have something on there
It
that's
was
gonna make.
timing out before. Why is it not timing out now?
It's got the stage right.
Try opening it on yours.
Yep. I will try it on mine.
Oh, there you go.
Still kicking it.
I'm not entirely sure why that was so slow.
Doing a beer run, anyone want any?
Just again.
I'm doing a beer under the fridge, anyone want something?
I just had one.
You just had one?
No one else.
3 and
Sorry,
5.
I was selfish and just got myself one.
Just like me.
I had a trouble.
I normally don't sleep between 3 and 5.
Okay.
I fall asleep and then I'm laying there flopping around and the sun cracks and then I'm asleep from
Then you're asleep, yeah.
So we got
This morning,
waiting a
too.
minute for beverage round or?
You need us to get a beverage round?
No, it's just checking if you guys were getting. We'll wait a second.
Okay, well, let's kind of go. Okay, so first of all, I mean, obviously, an Apple II doesn't have color. And okay, so we'll kind of go back into where we're, like, why this exists.
Oh, what the heck?
So we've sort of been, we originally looked at, we originally built an AppleSoft BASIC interpreter. It was written in Java, and the idea was that if we could make AppleSoft BASIC more user-friendly, then we could potentially get modern kids to at least look at it. Basically, you know, I mean, based on the amount of AppleSoft BASIC software there is available out there, it seemed like a viable idea, and you know, I still think it is, but we wrote the interpreter, and then the next sort of like what they call fantasy consoles is a big thing these days in terms of having 8-bit inspired game programming platforms that have additional functionality that didn't necessarily exist on the original consoles. So we decided, okay, well, what if we could enhance our AppleSoft BASIC interpreter, right? Which is pretty straightforward, but while maintaining compatibility with the Apple II software base, because you don't want to risk wrecking compatibility, because then it sort of defeats the point. So what we've done is we've built these additional text colors, for example, into the additional like bit space that we have left in a 32-bit byte. So the system is you know, has 256 you know bit size.
So,
3-bit bytes, sorry.
Yeah, normally
3-bit bytes.
be 8 bits per byte in regular Apple II. So we've actually technically got 32, and we can use those upper bytes, keep the lower 8 bits the same as the Apple II would expect, but in the case of the screen memory, we can cram extra stuff like color information or font size information.
You say that the Apple IIe didn't have color.
No.
But you gotta remember this, never say never about anything, because yes, there are crack screens that look just as colorful as yours, because nothing says you can't put the pixel for pixel right through the graphics screen and color what you want.
Yeah.
And they did exactly that.
That's true. I mean, you can write the font in color on the graphics screen, but in terms of being able to type in basic, in a particular color, that's sort of a different thing. Anyway, so just this is this is the basic interpreter. So the AppleSoft basic interpreter, it's your normal sort of AppleSoft basic interpreter. I mean, it has the advantage of
autocomplete
among other things.
It's
Yeah.
run the BBS software that's written in BASIC.
Is this?
What happens when it gets disk I/O commands? It probably dies.
So this is our interpreter. Like we started writing interpreters that were compatible with AppleSoft. This is the AppleSoft compatible interpreter.
So you can take this from here and run it on Apple II.
What you're running here, it's just Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Within this.
Yeah.
So you
It's
see,
a re-implementation of AppleSoft, but
Is
it's
it-
actually written in Golang at this level.
What happens when
but in the interpreter, yes, the interpreter you can there's autocomplete, there's scroll back, so there's history, so I can go back and I can just like list a line if I want to,
it's like
and then just
people
press up and then I can edit the line.
I mean, the fact that it's got the square bracket and the font is like an overlay over the fact that you're running the interpreter, you're not actually running.
Well,
Yeah.
yes and no. It is using the same screen memory that it would be using, like that AppleSoft would be using.
Okay.
And
So
for example, the variable memory, the variables are stored in exactly the same format, etc. That
So it's going
they
to get
would
the
be
same
stored in
garbage collection at
Apple.
the same point, at the same
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it would have to be because if you're looking at some of the AppleSoft basic games, I mean you like a lot of these things use machine language, especially on the Apple II, in order to have sound effects and that sort of thing. So this is a basic game, but it has a number of machine language routines in it, and so in order for it to work, it has to. And it doesn't work. Interesting.
Bug report.
Bug report. Okay, so
down in the chat, supposed to happen.
ordinarily,
It's the first rule of tech demos.
Yeah. Well, Jeff sent an email around, did you see that?
Just throw the computer at the organizer, like Steve Jobs threw that digital camera that time.
So this can be
Come on,
compiled
mate.
and run on.
I haven't seen it.
Can
yeah, because when you save the file to disk, right? If I save the file
I
back
haven't read it all yet.
to a DSK, then you could take that and put it onto, an Apple II and run it, assuming
This version of
assuming it's all pure AppleSoft, right? And of course, there's like additional, there's an editor, right?
This is
That's
like
cool.
this is like Program Writer or Beagle Basic on steroids.
This is awesome.
GPLE or all those things is it's like
I
oh my
like
god.
that's broken down.
Well, yeah. It
Actually, wait, not on
makes it a lot
steroids,
easier to
not on
read.
steroids.
If you just split on
Exactly.
colon and.
But there's
just
also,
indent.
there's like a renumber command, so
You couldn't give it
you
640 by 480.
renumber and it fixes it. It's all sorted out.
And there's a bunch of, but it's not just compatible. What you were saying before about saving the file, assuming it was AppleSoft compatible, because there are additional commands.
It's got image basic as well.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
So we also have
Running that old version of Breakout was very important to us.
Yeah.
And how many
And the
K does
bowling
this fit
game
in?
was integer, wasn't it?
Well, no,
There was
because
one?
it's an
Apple
interpreter.
It's effectively. I mean, it only runs on like a a PC.
Oh,
Yeah,
won't
yeah,
run
yeah.
it. Okay, cool.
No,
Yeah.
like all the editor and stuff, that's all part of the
Okay.
Octalyzer. But the programs you write, you can then save out and then run on an
Gotcha.
actual machine. So,
It's Applesoft.
Load
PC
Calibar
Applesoft
Galactica
on
in there.
steroids.
so the network is a bit slow.
Yeah, that's odd. It's accessing the network, so it's a bit, for some reason, the internet's being a bit slow.
It's
It's after-
7:39 on a
It's dinner time.
Friday.
Yep.
It's dinner time, everybody's come home, Telstra's
10 o'clock.
Netflix
And
that's when it'll
is
leave
soaking up all the
The
bandwidth.
network you loaded just a minute ago.
The whole continent is going, oh my god.
It's Friday night, yay!
I'm gonna try and
What
catch.
shall we watch on Netflix?
Just gonna try booting it again, and hopefully it'll be.
Cycle the wireless connect. Yeah. That's a little better. See, it didn't kind of pause the way it did.
Oz KFest.
Okay, so yeah, so there's an integer basic interpreter and a built-in. So catalog is actually a file browser as opposed to.
There's the one small integer program I tried to.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, you're seeing the folders though.
Plugin.
The problem is the cooler Tasmania is Tasmania will get on.
Yeah, there must be a problem with the cat. Write that down somewhere. It's gonna get
Call it a renegade, just look at that. The tone is.
Okay, so yeah, so you can do the same thing with loading integer basic games as well, and oops. And finally, there's logo, and we re-implemented logo. There we go. So you can go. Now this particular version of logo is slightly different in that you can go so for normal forward 10, right 10, but then up 10, roll right 10. And
Vector logo.
and it's kind of screwed up. And we're finding all the bugs tonight. I'm not sure why there's a.
Yeah, I'm not sure why the text is rendering solid. The backdrop shouldn't. Another bug.
I've
All right.
had that come up with.
I'm starting a list.
I've had that kind of stuff come up with Mac video driver issues.
I wonder if it's because your projector's plugged in, even though it's mirrored screen.
I've had that video driver pulled before too.
Is this so you can control Octalink from within Applesoft or Integer? Or
Released
logo.
Okay. So we kind of.
video overlay
we
card
get-
and the. No, you didn't get it?
So we ended up moving on.
I just ripped on here.
Guys,
All right. So we ended up moving on from the interpreters because anyway, it became obvious that getting access to the full Apple II software library was going to be sort of the logical next step, and so we built an emulator. I mean, as you could see from the demonstration that we ran.
It's something that sneaks up on you.
It just sort of.
You add sound
Feature
emulation,
creep.
which requires CPU, which requires speaker emulation, and then graphics support, and then eventually you've got an emulator.
And it does all the usual emulatory things in terms of having warp mode disk access, the usual.
I just don't remember that.
I forgot these, so I don't either.
And the default video mode is a raster video mode, so it's
That was so cool when that came out. I booted that up and I was like, wow, it's got shimmering water. Oh my god, it's that animation was so smooth.
I've never seen it.
So the Apple II only sends out monochrome pictures to the monitor, and it's the monitor that does all the colour. What are you using there to do the colour handling?
We've got a custom rasterizer that interprets that mono information and works out what the colours should be.
Right,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
You should talk about that.
Yeah, is it possible to have a look at that at some stage?
Yeah. So you got your mono, got a few different modes. We decided to add voxel support at one point, which is what you saw in the. We've got a basic dot mode. This is all OpenGL stuff. So voxels is kind of.
Yeah, we originally did the voxels for low res, but because it wasn't practical for the higher resolution modes, but then it just became practical over time. So
Well, that's what you're. Okay.
After several rounds of code optimization.
efficiencies were found.
That looks cool because it gives it the cool look, the perspective to it.
Yeah.
That is a very cool game. Look at that.
It's awesome.
I've got to
Yeah.
find it.
So
I've never seen anything like it.
I've never seen it. All right. That's a classic.
yeah. So we'll move on a bit from
You can have the
here.
net
Look
back
at
there.
how to play it. I haven't seen your track man.
And most of my schoolmates by then had C64.
There's so many things you can do.
Thank you for that.
So you can manually set all of these, parameters, move the camera around and so on and so forth. But there are a couple of ways of automating that. So the first thing we can look at is that because we actually have the ability to run parallel instances of the emulator, either of the interpreter or of the actual full-blown emulation. So the advantage to that, and so I've switched to the second instance and just gone into the basic interpreter. And the advantage to that is that you can then. So I'll just kind of go through in the editor and we'll just sort of look at what we all have here. So because it's a custom interpreter, what we've done to maintain compatibility is additional functionality that doesn't work, or that we wanted to add to the interpreter. We created a class of functions. Now AppleSoft Basic doesn't really have functions per se.
Not these kind. We'll
Not-
just clarify that.
Yeah, not these kind. So in the sense of having something that you can, issue a directive to and then get values back out of. But we decided on the convention of the @ symbol to kind of delineate, what was a function, so that the parser could continue to parse AppleSoft Basic programs without risking conflicting, without us inadvertently creating a new command that conflicted with, say, a variable name or that sort of thing, which is a real problem in AppleSoft Basic. So these @ functions give you all of this additional functionality. So the first command here, it tells this interpreter that all additional functions operate on the first slot. So the first slot currently has Miss Pac-Man in it. And then we set the render mode. We reset the camera in case the camera's been moved someplace else. And then we set the palette that we're going to affect with the palette related commands. So in Octalyzer, the colors are what determines the sort of offsets of various pixels, how large a pixel is, and the color itself. So color offset, for example, says, the third color in HDR should be in its offset in a certain way, color 7 offset, so on and so forth. the color depth command.
And so we can redefine colors as well, so you can tweak the palette.
Yeah, so
Using the RGBA commands, you
Yeah.
can tweak the palette. You can even make certain colors semi-transparent if you want.
Yeah.
You can just basically.
So this initial stuff basically sets up that custom visualization of Miss Pac-Man, and then the following code after that automates camera movement. So let's see what that does for it. So it's running, it doesn't show anything, but if I go back to the actual Miss Pac-Man screen, zoom in a little bit. So now, if you notice, for example, with the cherry on the Apple II, the stem I think is green, but we've remapped the colors so that.
Because you can.
Because we can,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a demo.
This is the cool thing with that too, is you've got, it doesn't look flat. It actually has,
It has some depth to
Yeah.
it. And you can customize that depth too. You could make it, you could extrude the pixels
Ooh,
right
okay.
out if you wanted to.
Hold on, did you just remap the colour of the stem of the cherries
Yeah.
in the interpreter?
Well, the second interpreter has told the first instance that when you're going to draw that HDR green, you're going to use a different colour.
So you've changed green across the screen.
Yep.
Ah, okay, wow.
yeah, notice
So you
there's no green
could
in
set
there.
up custom colour palettes for particular games, that kind of thing.
And this is all in a really cool format that feels quite homely in
So then,
basic
so now,
interpreter.
Can you get a high score?
Try playing it upside down and backwards.
Oh, far out.
The arrow keys would be the wrong way around, isn't it?
Yes.
Far out. This is the best party game ever.
So this is how we're going to have our gaming competition while
Yeah,
The next,
minimum 2 beers.
Every lost life is a shot drinking.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Oh dear, getting messy.
Your mind adapts, doesn't it? And it becomes second hand.
Okay, have a shot. The rules. Official Oz KFest 2017 rules. Oh, there you go.
So, I mean, there's numerous possibilities with all sorts of existing software of coming up with ways to automate, like, for example, to automate the camera. However, you can also, for example, read and write to memory addresses in the other slots.
So you can actually manipulate the running
So
memory of the other.
you can do, print mem.peak and then
So
10,000 and get that value back.
Externally morphing code.
And then if I wanted to set it, then I could, mempoke 10,000 comma, and it might cause something to crash. I don't know. Oh, I went print there. Oops. It might cause something to crash. I don't know, but
Have you got an example where this can be used from one instance to the next?
We've got some example programs that we've developed. We can put them on the online file repository that Octalyzer uses.
yeah,
Yeah.
this functionality isn't actually really released yet, so it's in our testing track, the most recent stuff. So in terms of being able to do the parallel stuff like the Pac-Man wobbling, that's currently not publicly available. But it's available if you download it and then you run the Octalyzer with the testing flag.
So there's a testing flag, which means you get the super secret test builds.
Yeah.
Leading edge. Yep.
Okay, so you can do this configuration with a control program, or alternatively, if you're sort of less inclined in terms of messing about, the second way that you can customize the games is by creating a what we call a presentation. Well, it's an octafile, which is a container. We'll just show that. So this is a shift control. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a way you could make this two-player. One person controls the angle, trying to kill that.
Oh, that's actually
I
a
was
good
saying the
one.
other night, you could almost have it like.
Although if it was flat like a table, then all you could see was the
Well,
edge of the stuff.
You've got to go up the hill, you go slower, you go down the hill, you go faster.
So I used a key combination to create what's called an oct file, which is a sort of a custom format for the Octalyzer that, you know, if you go into it.
It's a container, so it essentially wraps around the original disk that you had booted, and then it stores additional information about like how you want the camera, how the palette is, everything else.
Yeah. So it has a configuration file in it. So you can sort of set up the camera and the colors and everything else through keyboard commands, and then create the oct file. And then if you want to go in and change things, then there's a configuration file. It's human readable, and you can just kind of go through and change those settings to whatever you like.
Yeah, we are also in the process of adding the whole custom scripting thing we showed you running from one slot to the other, of having the Octafile contain that script, so it will boot the disk, apply the settings, and it will run that additional thing that's doing the manipulation, so you can set up quite a custom kind of environment that's just like a one-shot to start.
Okay. So now for the next thing that the other person had at Kansas Fest, which, yeah, anyway, we've actually had the recording and rewind functionality for a while.
We saw it, we didn't want to raid on anybody's parade about the whole live rewind thing, because we actually released that on Octalyzer about 5 months ago.
Right.
Set in stone, so you've got evidence.
I've got 2-bit logs.
Yeah.
Rewind.
Cherry wine.
It's the quiet achievers that make the difference.
Vomiting.
Oh wow.
So and then you can just cut in and
I wouldn't cut in now.
I did cut in.
Yeah, you cut in just in time to die. So,
Obviously, I made a bad choice.
so it uses a similar mechanic to, you could watch the talk. However, ours, one thing we haven't touched on yet is that we can run the back end of the interpreter and the emulation across the network. Whereas the client's just a visualization of the memory, right? Everything, including the additional higher level stuff, is just memory based. So, as part of that, we had to develop a network protocol for efficiently communicating the memory deltas. So, whereas I think the guy was talking about taking like a snapshot of the memory like 10 times a second, the whole memory, we just record the deltas, but they're like time asymmetrical, so you can go forward or backwards and it will alter the memory. Like,
Skylab.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
It's like lifetime machine.
Yeah, it runs. Because,
Yeah, it's just the
No.
deltas are like any really.
No, you're playing Pac-Man. and you die. Screw that. I shouldn't have gone there on that corner. Back up. Go back the other way.
And you can do that over the network, over the net.
Well, yeah. So one of the things we have developed, and we're working on it. Still needs a bit more work, but is the idea that we can have like an instance running on a server, and maybe it's Miss Pac-Man, or maybe it's a two-player game, and we can actually have two people, and we can say, my paddle 1 is actually paddle 2, and their paddle 1 is paddle 1, so that they can play versus each other.
Yeah.
Warlords.
Yeah, and Warlords was one we were testing with.
So this is a built-in online service that currently does nothing except that. So you know.
Have you set it up like a BBS?
But all it does is chat currently. So
Itself.
So there's only one option that works. It's this chat thing, right?
Now you're going to make me check if the remit's running. I hope it is.
Mind. blown.
Okay, so we have this chat now. It's basically based on diversity dial from the 1980s. So you tune to channels like on a CV radio, and then you can talk. Now diversity dial had channels. We had channel 0. I think it didn't have channel 0. But what we've done is for the channels from A to F. These
special channels.
These actually, hopefully, if it works, and it is working.
So you can see that prompt, that is actually a remote back end running. So that's running up on our server.
So this is actually running on a server.
Little nod.
So this is the blue part. That's your local view of your chat.
Yep.
And on the left is your view of the remote machine running.
This is in-game chat. No?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've got a friend and you really want to work together on some AppleSoft code.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do that too.
Is that
When are you going 16-bit again?
Is what?
Apple Bowl multiplayer.
I don't know. The only one that I knew was multiplayer was that Pong one that came with data move on.
So this is please Wi-Fi behave. This is actually running on a server in, where is that server? In the US. It's in the US somewhere.
California.
It's in the cloud.
It's a Linode in California. And so
DreamHost.
I've started.
Maybe see if I can.
I'm probably gonna get killed really quick, but in theory, yes, 4 people can play Warlord over the internet with each other.
And there's some
Doesn't have to
commands
be
in
full
the chat. There's commands in the
Leave one of
chat
them,
for
let the computer
remapping
play.
controls, so you can decide because you sign on with an account to Octalink. Like I've got an April account, then you can actually remap controls based on name, just with little commands in the chat.
Okay.
The first person that goes into a particular one becomes the chat owner, and they can assign controls and say who's going to play. And
Now you don't have to use the chat. If you're on a local area network, you can just connect using the command line. There's a command line.
you can connect to somebody else's.
I'm an Apple II gamer, move over PC gamers.
There are ways that you can connect the 2 instances together and share a running session.
The cool part with this is, it isn't that you've taken, yeah, we have network games and we have stuff now, it's you're taking this classic old stuff that, who would have ever thought?
Move over PC gamers. Forget it. Wow.
I'm just trying to think if there's much else to really show right now.
Just
That 8, so we're probably
a little bit more.
Go all night if you
But
want.
wait, there's still more.
Oh no.
So we covered the 3D stuff in the main line. I mean, obviously, you can do normal emulator stuff like record sessions.
So you can, so you have, there's like a virtual file system. You've got a local folder, which is literally on your hard drive, so you can save stuff to that. If you create an account, you've got a local directory, local on the server, that you can save files to, and you get access to all the networky stuff anyway, even if you don't have an account.
Yeah. So since I've logged in, now that I've logged in, the other thing that gets you is that you do get a cloud directory. So all of these files, they're in my personal directory, and I've been doing a lot of stuff. So and then you've got your local directory, which is the local directory that you have on your hard disk, and it has things like folders with disk recordings in them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that live rewind, you can actually record that out to a file as well locally, and you can later go back and you can actually just select that from the catalog and it'll start playing it. And if you feel like you want to kind of change history, you can just hit a key and jump in the same way with the standard live rewind.
And the Apple II folder is a network shared folder that's shared to every user of the a system that has, you know, a fairly large collection of various Apple II software in it, so you don't even have to go to archive.org. You can just select which disk you want and
Cracked by Woz. I'm not sure it's the Woz. I suspect not.
I don't even know how to select things in this
One.
Okay. Yeah, then you just
Yeah, and so there's, that's probably, there are key combinations, everything to control the camera.
yeah, those keys they're listed on the website.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah,
Well, actually,
already
you,
got
you,
those games.
yeah,
Just
you
gonna
can
do it.
get some simple help if you do Control-Shift-H as well.
Okay.
But it does give quite a facelift to the old games that you can, you know, have them in 3D. So we're working on all of these angles just kind of gradually over time.
We can write a game called Nature Trail to Hell, and we can play it in 3D.
So we're just kind of working on all of these aspects, the fantasy console aspect, the facelift stuff for the existing games. Eventually we're going to move on to making that online service an actual thing that you can actually, you know, set with
do more than access files and chat.
boards and
Oh, yeah.
messaging and stuff. And we're going to get there eventually.
Wow.
I feel like, you know, you got the NES Mini and the SNES Mini. Should have like embedded into like an Apple II Mini.
Yeah.
The pies are available.
Yeah, you can
Cases
do
are
it.
available from Charles.
Yeah.
So.
Can you buy more than one these days?
The files are available. You can print your own
The
cases.
last RetroPie image I used on my Raspberry Pi, it had an Apple II emulator on there, but the sound is terrible. Your sound is fine, it didn't have any scratchy or glitchy elements, but it was very you couldn't use it. And of course, just straight RGB pixels stretched out. It wasn't any sort of nice filtering or. I mean, I think what I noticed with the 3D effect, if not for the fact that you just put on a very subtle tint, you get. Is it like a 50% sort of darker shadow to what the top color is?
That's actually based on the OpenGL lighting model. So
Okay, because I
Yeah.
think that actually rounds out the image a bit more.
it does. If
nice.
you just have that bit, it's almost like anti-aliasing on the
Yeah.
image. Yeah.
It gives a softening effect to those really hard lines you can get.
Yeah, because it was soft on a CRT, right?
Which I
You know,
appreciate
softer
seeing.
on a CRT.
Well, I was always trying to just get it right. It's like, that's
Yeah. So the last thing to look at tonight is Paleotronic Magazine. Now, that's something we've been working on for a few months now, and just sort of trying to figure out how this is going to work as an idea. But things are gradually starting to come together. So the idea is that it's a retro technology magazine, and it's going to focus on vintage technology. There are retro gaming magazines out there, and retro gaming magazines will certainly be a part, but we want to focus more on the historical side of things, and how, for example, games were created, the platforms that they were on, and everything. So, but across a variety of technological disciplines. So from radio to television to computers to consoles to you name it. There does seem to be an appetite for it, which is good. I've had a number of subscription requests, even though I haven't actually told anybody what it's going to cost. Haven't really worked that out yet.
It's a full-time
Show
job
them
laying
what.
out a magazine, though.
It is. I'm lucky in the sense. Well, I'm lucky and I'm unlucky in the sense that I'm actually disabled, so I can't really work a full-time job. So I mean, it gives me other opportunities, which is good. But there's a ridiculous amount of material out there that can be jumped on fairly. Like, you don't have to go far to pick the apples from the tree. Pardon the pun. So the idea is that yes, I mean each magazine will have a number of departments, and these departments will be relatively standardized, and everything from the computing, console gaming, arcade and pinball gaming, RPG, text adventures, coding, audio video equipment. I mean, I personally worked as a computer technician for 10 years, electronics technician, computer consultant, network consultant, system administrator, and she's got all the programming experience you could ever think of. It's together we're fairly well versed in most of these subjects, and so.
She's got the graphic design chops though.
Yeah. And plus I worked in a graphic design, I interned in a graphic design firm way back in the 1980s when you basically had to go, have a coffee and a cigarette break when you printed something to the printer.
The raster processor.
So you were,
Yeah, 100.
and the boss would get really upset at you if you blew a print to the Linotronic. It's like,
God damn it, I put it out without cutting it. I'm through
The closest I can come with that is I went to my dad again, the ANU, they had laser riders there, and I did a full page image at 600 DPI.
yeah.
And about 5 minutes later, this Chinese lady came storming in going, "Who's printing on the laser rider? Can't move my mouse." And Dad goes, "Did you do something to the printer?" No, nothing. And then he finally goes, "Did you choose 600 DPI?" I went, "Yes." He crashed it, and so I crashed this poor lady's thing that was printing out on the somehow.
How could you?
That's all I really remember.
You crashed her machine
Um,
for using the
What
printer.
she printed, it somehow stopped printing because of what I was buffering up, I guess.
Oh, and the spool on her machine locked up.
Yeah, it was only shared through the Apple Talk kind of. They had one printer, and I even remember seeing the cables that were joining it all
Oh,
together.
saturated it.
Yeah, so this is probably System 6 days, and I've been so scared ever since to bump up resolution because of that.
The Chinese lady will come in your door.
All angry. But, even like my brother, I've got a brother printer, sorry, not my brother, a brother printer. If I do 1200 DPI, and sometimes it'll just print an error message saying, "Oh, sorry, you've exceeded my buffer. Can you lower the resolution?" It actually prints out an error message, doesn't sit there and get obsessed with freezing or anything.
Hey Jeremy, I
Oh,
have a
man.
spare silent time. You walk in the road, it's only like 60 DPI or something. And it's quiet, very quiet. I don't think you could ever fill it buffer.
Lovely smooth paper.
Yeah, it's shiny. Just don't leave it in the sun.
No, don't touch it.
You may need to pay for extra luggage weight when you go there.
Yeah,
Because
it's
they're
pretty
very
heavy.
solid.
For a little printer, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, they hurt when they drop on your foot.
Yeah. Never did that.
So for example, in the sorts of things we'll have as feature presentations each month. That's I want to do a feature on the Dskalyzer, which was the Apollo computer. That's important. The first ENIAC, and the fact that the first computer programmers were actually women, and the story behind that. the first transmissions, the first television program was like a Canadian fellow, and he sort of invented this transmitter and then used it to put on a Christmas show for ships out at sea. Television, the first viable television camera was an accident because the person who was baking, I can't even remember the name. But anyway, they baked this material too long and it fractured, and because it fractured into essentially these sort of like almost crystals, it actually improved television camera reception by an order of magnitude. So the reason we have television was, well, because somebody did something wrong. Usual suspects: Pong, the Apple II.
Yeah, but see, I can look at that and realise you've got layers there that you have to right click on to get to the blending modes, to set the drop shadow, set the colour. I'm praising you here. You've got an emboss or a bevel on your Apple II forever. All of that takes time, so it's...
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm fairly familiar with, the Adobe application suite. So,
sure.
I mean, a lot of these concepts have been around for quite some now, all the way back to when I was interning, 30 years ago. Well, not quite that long. 25 years ago.
Okay.
And there's a wealth of, so there's a wealth of material too, existing material in terms of, magazine, vintage magazine advertisements, which, are kind of interesting to revisit, and for younger people, kind of provide some historical context. And I kind of want to have a tongue-in-cheek sort of, style to the magazine in terms of, kind of, like in this case, this department is about computing back in the good old days. Those days when we had to walk to school up in the snow, uphill both ways, and avoid being eaten by velociraptors.
You should change all the prices in the ads to kind of...
Oh, yeah.
What the...
I remember that ad.
We're the 8-bit generation where the user unfriendliness of their computers like a badge of honor, while the rest of the world was calling them nerds behind their backs. The point-and-click era ushered in a new age of computing that didn't require a PhD in geekery to file your stroganoff recipes. Now I'm recruiting people to do these, these various departments, but they wanted to. A lot of people wanted to kind of see what the magazine was going to, look like, and what the feel of it was going to be. But they're getting more interested now.
Ooh, look.
Ooh, I'm an 80 nerd. Collected Sony for a while.
You got a video disc?
No carrier,
Player?
but you've got a PC
Laser
ISA
No,
modem in
video
the front of the Apple IIe.
Video discs.
Yeah, but it's
Like,
not
who made
going
it?
to be. I mean, it's the
RCA.
telecommunications revolution.
No,
So
I've seen it on YouTube.
Put a micro modem
many times.
for
With the
$300.
Disco
record.
Vision.
Might have been called that. We're talking vinyl record as a video player.
Yeah, there were
Yep.
two formats, Laserdisc and Disco Vision was...
No, not a laser. Uses a needle
you're talking
on a
about
vinyl.
CED, the CED
Yeah.
disc.
That's what
Yes,
I said
thank you.
first. Yeah, CED.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I had a.
No, I don't.
My family had a CED player.
That okay.
Yeah.
In Canada or in
Yeah,
Australia?
in Canada. Yeah.
I haven't found
If the-
anyone in Australia, but apparently it was big here in Sydney.
If the record got scratched, the movie
Yeah.
would skip.
It was in a caddy,
Yeah.
if I
You
remember.
pushed the whole thing in and it took it out and you got back the hard sleeve.
Yeah,
And
that's
it
it.
kept the disc with
Yeah. Okay,
the
so
thing
was
around.
it Technomone that's
Yeah, he did a review
that
of it.
did the whole
Tech
thing
Nine.
with the Japanese titles, Indiana Jones, I think he had it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looked so cool to load the cartridge. You just slotted it in there, it pulled it out.
Yeah.
They released
Okay.
that.
It was good
It was
for
apparently
kids.
big in
I mean, it
Australia
was-
for a
It was a
year or
good
two.
system for kids.
Dot and the Kangaroo was
Well,
released
the other
on
thing is
set.
the records were so the
You never heard of it?
grooves
Oh,
were
look it
so
up.
micro. that If you pulled it out and looked at it, it had this really cool looking sheen.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason they put it in a caddy is dust would fill up the grooves.
Yes.
And cement themselves in there.
Yeah. But the caddy also made them relatively kid-proof. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
They could play the movie and then go outside and play frisbee.
I remember 4-year-olds happily changing the, putting on movies and that sort of thing, because it's just, you slid it in,
The
pulled
prank,
it
the
out.
prank part was I'd go take the discs and swap,
And
swap
mix
the
them.
contents.
Which is why I think there was only one porn movie released on CD.
Real kid-friendly.
Because after that, they realized that this could become a real problem. Because there was no identification on the actual bracket, like the mounting bracket. So yes, you could, and people were doing that.
Other than the fact that if you had to pulled it out of the blue case, you wanted to have a blue end on it. But yeah, other than that, yeah, there was nothing on there.
Yeah, which is why they actually took to putting the sort of premium movies in those blue cases, and then because people were running into problems where people were like going to the video store and renting Star Wars, and then
Brings back less.
The next person would rent it, and they'd end up with like some Jane Fonda's workout or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty big problem.
But unfortunately, the format didn't live terribly long because VCRs.
Yes. Recordable.
The price of VCRs came down.
So that and
more.
Disco Vision kind of helped kill it. But,
Yeah.
But then that took so long. It was only after Pioneer bought the thing
Yeah.
that it took off.
We never really got them in. The cities they did. But
Laser Disc Australia, my goodness, they are pumping this. The average price is $8. Hundreds of people swapping.
Currently?
Yeah, today I was on it going, oh, look at these titles.
wow.
There's so many nice.
I still
the
think-
artwork is so nice.
And I still think that some of the videos, they look much better because you're looking at black, not simulated. The darkness and whatnot between, like when DVDs first came out, like the dark scenes in Star Wars, you saw gray instead of black.
Yeah.
Alright, so I guess that's about it for us. I'll be.
So you're not being up to much now.
No, nothing at all.
I'm not quite as far in on the magazine. So this preview sort of coming attractions thing I plan on releasing by mid-September at the latest, and then and basically I'm going through and I'm sort of doing examples for each department, and so I'm about half done. I've got a bit more work to do, and then yeah, if anybody could be if it inspires anybody to want to contribute or do an article for a department, you don't have to take over a whole department forever. Let me know.
How often do you think you might be publishing this? Because I see volume 1, number 0 there, so you're
Should it be
obviously
volume 0, number 0?
contemplating more than one.
Track zero,
How many
sector one,
per
sector zero.
year, I guess?
It depends. It's going to. I would like to see this become a monthly thing. The thing is it just becomes a matter of content. I'm lucky. I'm lucky in the short term because October is a fairly easy month to come up with material for because just spooky Halloween related stuff. It's not that hard to research. But once you start getting, I don't know. There's lots of material out there. It's really just a matter of finding contributors. Now that said, the magazine is actually kind of part of a VC competition now down in Melbourne. So there might be some investment in it. which would be good.
Venture capital, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if I can get some investment, then I can actually, hire people, I guess, or at least maybe not hire people, but pay people.
Pay for,
What do they
pay
say?
for,
Yeah, pay them.
Storage.
Yeah.
Freelance.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Which I'd be happy to pay. I'm going to be doing alpha thing. I'm working out how much people could potentially get paid anyways, because this is the intention is that this is going to be a paid thing. So it's a commercial product.
How'd you come up with the Paleotronic title?
GoDaddy, and anyway, I went through a phase where I spent a lot of time domain fishing, I guess. So I was just researching domain names, and I stumbled on Paleotronic as a portmanteau, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's a good one. Nobody's used it before, so it's mine now.
Sits with retro tech, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Very good.
Cool.
I like it.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on all the fantastic things you're working on.
Oh yeah.